What are you doing to disciple your kids? That Deuteronomy 6 call to discipleship is what the Lord has called us to. He's gifted us with these kids. Let's point them to Him.
I'll tell you what, it feels overwhelming sometimes. The responsibility of helping your children see the world the way God does. Or maybe you're just thinking, I don't know if I want to be a parent. What would it really be like to raise kids who put God at the center? How do you help them form a biblical worldview? Well, this is one of the things we get to do on this show. And there's going to be another show coming out through Summit Ministries called Upside Down Parenting. That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Dr. Jeff Myers. I'm the host of your show. It's called The Truth Changes Everything podcast. We believe that the truth of Jesus does change everything. And every week I just call up people and ask them questions about what that looks like in their area of expertise, record it, and send it to you. That's what this show is. And today I'm honored to have Matt Jones and Janel Greig on this show. They are the co-hosts of Summit Ministries' newest podcast, Upside Down Parenting. In the podcast, they give practical insights, biblical wisdom. They encourage you. They don't try to shame you or make you feel bad because of the things that you haven't been doing yet. So if parenting sometimes feels upside down, that's okay. Following God's design is often upside down, at least compared to the way the world does things. And that's what makes this show so powerful. I'm really excited about the conversation. Let's welcome Matt and Janel to the Truth Changes Everything podcast. Matt Jones and Janel Greig, welcome to the Truth Changes Everything podcast.
Oh, thank you for having us, Dr. Jeff.
You two are the hosts of another podcast from Summit Ministries, a brand new one, and I'm hearing that it's just going great. I'm very, very excited about that. It's called Upside Down Parenting. Okay, so tell us a little of you first. What inspired your passion for helping parents navigate their kids' worldview formation?
Mm-hmm. You want me to take that, Matt?
Yeah, why don't you start us out?
You guys battle it out. Yeah, that's right.
We're getting good at that.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's extremely personal. When my husband and I first had our first kiddo, and we're blessed with her, we were very intentional in how we wanted to disciple our kids. Very intentional in that. I spent years in MOPS as our kids. We have 3 kids. They're now 17, 15, and 13, and spent about 10 years in MOPS in a season of realizing there were a lot of parents out there that didn't really know how to disciple their kids. Some weren't even taking the call from the Lord seriously for that. So for me, it became a passion of the Lord providing a platform and a little bit of a fire in my heart, and started in MOPS and wanting to equip these other mamas and encourage and exhort them what we were doing at home. Not that we had it all figured out here, and we still don't. So I'm learning most of that from Matt. But as we go, it's been, as we've taught Sunday school at church and been involved in church, at church, it's been a little bit of a call to, hey, parents, what are you doing to disciple your kids? That Deuteronomy 6 call to discipleship is what the Lord has called us to. He's gifted us with these kids. Let's point them to Him. So there's a real personal passion for my husband and I both in that. I work at a K-12 Christian school, and I see that within our parents in the community there too. Some don't know where to start. Some really aren't even walking with the Lord themselves. So what an opportunity to come alongside parents and point them to the Lord.
Wow, love it. Matt, you're a professor at Colorado Christian University. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen you with your students a little bit in the cafeteria. You're like the favorite professor up there. That's my observation. Now, I don't think that can all be faked, because I've seen this on a number of occasions. Yeah. You know every student by name. You care about them, but I've also seen you with your bride and with your kiddos at Summit Ministries as well. But I'd love to hear a little of your story.
Yeah, I appreciate that encouragement. And really, Summit was kind of the catalyst for me to say, I want to be more of a voice for parents and really for the children. Summit gave me the opportunity a few years ago to speak on marriage, and it really caused me to do a deep dive on marriage and family and parenting. And I just came away with this strong conviction of the importance of the family. And while I grew up in a great home, my wife and I, we've been married for 29 years. We have 3 incredible children, 2 we like. It just depends on the day. We have realized just how important this institution of not only marriage, but also the marriage investment when it comes to kids. And I come across so many students, even in a Christian college, young people that really don't seem to be excited about the prospect of having children or even being parents. And it first of all breaks my heart, because even Jesus cared about the kids, right? He says, let the little children come to me, and he rebukes the disciples for treating them as if they're a burden. And children are an incredible gift. And one of the things I've really appreciated about working with Janel, it's very clear that she loves her kids. It's very clear that she wants to help parents disciple. And I just can't believe I get to be a part of having this discussion of, hey, how can a marriage function? And giving some principles for that so that you can function well with your kids. And so children are a gift from God, and I want to help be a part of changing that narrative that we see on television, that we see in commercials, that kids are a burden and they're just expensive. Oh man, not if you understand the depth of a gift they are, not only to you, but also society. And so I'm hoping to work with Janel and do this Upside Down Parenting podcast to present even the idea that children are not a burden, but they are a gift. And that is an upside down perspective in our society today.
Yeah, that's so great. Well, I appreciate both of you. It's what an excellent perspective. And we are working with a rising generation. They're afraid to have children.
Yeah.
They give all kinds of different reasons, from it's just too much trouble to it's too expensive. I think the one I heard most recently this summer was it's too big of a carbon footprint to have children.
Yeah.
Children. In other words, it was sort of a climate change issue. Recognizing that when God gives us children, every child is a nation in embryo when you think about it.
Yeah.
And they are God's answer to the challenges that we face in society. Okay, well, this is really great, but I want to talk about this idea of worldview formation in a minute for a minute, because one thing I like about your show is that it isn't just about what to do. It is about how to think about parenting. It's why you do everything that you do. And we use this term worldview formation. Talk about how that makes the Upside Down Parenting show unique.
Yeah, we got to figure out who's going to go first on these. Janel, you want to go first again?
We'll get better in this rhythm.
Yeah.
No, you go first this time. We'll take turns, Matt.
Well, what's cool, I think, about Janel and I working together on this is, first of all, she has an incredible background in terms of apologetics, and she really cares about helping us not only understand what we believe and why, but then also being able to defend that. And I have a background degree in biblical studies, in particular the New Testament. And so whenever we're sitting down and working with who we call our bearded wonder, our producer, Justin, we sit back and say, all right, what's this biblical worldview? What's the biblical perspective on this particular topic? And then say, how do we look at that particular topic through the lens of a biblical worldview? And it's kind of been a cool team up in terms of having her perspective, not only as an apologist, and also mine in terms of my biblical studies background, to be able to discuss some of those things and have it also from a mom and a dad perspective from 2 different families. Yep. And so just saying, listen, Scripture is core. One of the passages that Janel likes to bring up a ton is Deuteronomy 6. And I'm like, we're all over Deuteronomy 6, but what are the implications of that in a day-to-day, moment-by-moment integration of, here's what Scripture says, how do we believe it, is it true, how do we live it, and then open up with these principles to say, all right, in light of your family, how has God gifted and empowered through the work of the Spirit to live out those principles? Because it's not going to look the same. Janel and I have already exchanged stories where there's some things that we do differently, but we're trying to both work from a biblical worldview.
Yeah,
Janel?
Of course. Well, I love that, because what you're talking about is your noetic, your way of thinking about things.
Yeah,
Janel, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I am enjoying working with Matt so much. Matt, it's such a blessing, and it's so cool to see how it feels like God has brought this together. And from the get-go, getting to partner with Matt for Summit has just been such a blessing, and it's been easy. And like you say, Matt, it's neat because our kiddos, we each have 3 kiddos, and they kind of stair step right on down the line. Matt's are a little bit older. We have a little bit of overlap, but we've got similar seasons, but lots of different experience to draw from. I think one of the things, as we're looking to help equip parents to disciple their kiddos, that biblical worldview component is so important, because as the Barna results, have shown that 2 to 4% of Christians actually hold that biblical worldview. And it looks like 2% is that lower number for parents. And if parents don't have that, they can't pass it on to their kids. Right. And so to help equip parents of an understanding of the importance of it, it grows their own faith. And apologetics in our household, for me, it changed the trajectory of our family. My husband, when we first got married, really struggled with his faith. It was the creation account, and the Lord provided some really cool resources that changed that. And he really encouraged me to get into apologetics. And I was still on that, I have my faith. I don't need the cerebral. I have my faith. But as we began to have kids and I started to see it change, I realized I wanted more than just my kids in heaven with me. Right. I wanted to understand why I believe what I believe and give that to them to be bold disciples for Jesus. And so to do that for other parents, to share that this is what this can do for your faith so that you can pass it on to the next generation and help build up the kingdom of God, is something that we're very passionate about and we're excited to do. And we have fun while we do it.
I love it. I love it. Well, I want my kids to be in heaven with me too, but I also want them to, in the way they live, bring eternity into time. I want them to display God's eternal glory in the way they live their everyday lives. And on your show, you talk about Deuteronomy chapter 6 all of the time. On this show, we don't as much, so I probably should just do a little bit of background on that. Deuteronomy is, of course, the divine constitution of God's people. And one of the very first things, this is something that a Jewish family would repeat multiple times a day. Yep. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul and with all of your might. Yep. And then it goes into the part that you guys talk about, which is you should teach this. When you sit down, when you stand up, when you rise, when you go to bed, when you leave the house, when you come home, that it's an everyday kind of action. With my students at Summit Ministries, I always wave my pen over that because the hotel is that direction from the studio right there. Not that would make any sense to anybody who's watching, but I talk about that word might. Love the Lord your God with all of your might. It's this word meod. Meod is the Hebrew word for very. You should love the Lord your God with your very. That's a conundrum. That's a paradox in a way. But it makes perfect sense when you realize that that's how you really, if you want to be successful, if you want to win at anything, you have to do it with your very. It is not the athletes with the biggest muscles that get the most gold medals. It's the Olympic athletes who cannot not win. They have just decided with their very that they are going to do whatever it takes to achieve a level of success that's recognized in their field.
And I think that very is really important, Dr. Jeff, because I think that if you're living out that very, it results not only in human flourishing for you as parents, not only for you as parents and your kids, but also the community within which they engage. And we want to see parents flourish. We want to see their kids flourish because it gives a greater chance when their kids have kids, their families flourish. And so I really appreciate you bringing in the Deuteronomy 6 and saying, hey, this is what very can look like. And just this human flourishing is we care a ton about that as Janel and I are working together and engaging in this ministry with Summit.
Janelle, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What are some of the biggest challenges you see parents facing today? Because you work with a whole lot of them in K through 12 education.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, they're not necessarily focused on discipleship. I don't remember where I saw the statistic the other day, but fewer than 1 in 2 Christian parents think that the discipling of their children is important. So what are some of the challenges that you see?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest is busyness. Parents are overly busy. They're filling their calendars with things, but not with the things necessarily that matter. They schedule sports, they schedule play dates, but they're not scheduling that intentional discipleship. And so I think busyness, but also a lack of awareness for the importance of that. And again, that goes back to that. Is the faith there for the parents themselves? Are they living that out? Are they walking with the Lord? Are they do they have that foundation? And so I think that's a challenge. Parents tend to, and it might be a combination of the busyness and the feeling ill-equipped, but outsource the discipleship. They drop the kids off at the Christian school. They drop the kids off at church. But again, they're not growing in their relationship with the Lord and knowledge of Him and His Word in order to impart that to their children. And so those, I would say, are some of the biggest challenges. But what we're trying to do to meet those parents, hopefully our listeners on the Upside Down Parenting podcast, is give some practical tips. Give those little nuggets of, this isn't a 7-week curriculum. It's not something you do, you plug and play. This is a lifelong posture to the Lord. What's your focus? What are we here for? Again, those worldview questions. What's your purpose? So getting the parents to think about that so their faith changes so that they can then equip their kiddos.
That's great.
Man, I love that. That's so good. I think about what it means. Christian education is a big commitment. That parents have made that commitment is a big deal. But I can easily see a parent saying, I am writing you a big check this month. And what I expect for this is the transaction, is that you will send my kid home more like Jesus than they left the earlier.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. But what's really happening is you're saying to the parents, look, we're spending the entire day piling up kindling. Whether a match gets put to that depends on what happens at home.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you hit a nail on the head there, because it really needs to be modeled by the parents. And working with college students, I've been doing that for over 20 years, and generally you can tell students who have come from homes where the parents have invested, where the parents have discipled, and the ones who haven't. And they're the ones that, whenever they haven't, those are the parents that have said, here, write the check, as you mentioned. And the reality is that the responsibility, especially in light of Scripture, falls on the parents to disciple their children. And Janel does a great job highlighting that whenever we get together. And I was curious whenever this question came up, Dr. Jeff, what do you think is the biggest challenge you see parents facing today? I was just curious what you would answer.
I relate to the busyness aspect of it. Now, so Stephanie and I are empty nesters. And we're kind of in that transition period where we're starting to realize there's still parenting going on. There's still discipling going on, but it looks very different. When Justin is in here a little bit ago, and they have this cute little girl baby, and it's just such a different life, because my daily rhythms have nothing to do with getting up in the middle of the night to comfort a crying child. Maybe Stephanie has to get up with me in the middle of the night to comfort me, but there's no. I can wake up in the morning and I can, do my exercise at such and such a time and leave for work at such and such a time, and there's not really anything that intervenes. I think maybe what the biggest challenge that I faced was going back to that issue of the very, loving God with your very, with loving God with your muchness, because I firmly believe that God has given to each of my children a motivated ability, or maybe several motivated abilities. That's what I call them. They're things that they can do, that they are motivated to do, things that return energy to them and make them feel more alive. And they're extraordinarily different. 4 kids growing up in the same household who are totally different. I've got one kiddo. She wakes up every day. She's a helicopter pilot. She wakes up every day ready to take on a very dangerous job, and she loves every minute of it. That is a motivated ability of perseverance, but it's also a motivated ability of a technical expertise. I get overwhelmed with the technical stuff. If I'm in the helicopter with her and they start talking to the control tower, I'm like, look, you guys might as well be speaking a foreign language. I have no idea what you just said, and I don't really care to know. But she's the one who says, I care to know that. I always feel uncomfortable getting down into the details too much. She wants to be in the details. So how do I raise her according to that bent, I guess, is the way I think about it. And I think that was always really challenging because there just isn't much about our education system that identifies and affirms and builds on those unique things that each child has.
Yeah.
Yep.
We just don't have the capacity, right? I mean, and Janelle, in your classrooms, Matt, your classrooms, I know you guys are in schools that like to not have mass education. So it's not like there are 400 kids in there.
Right.
But still, it's 20 or 30 at times, all of the things that you're doing. You can't really do that. But the parents can.
Right.
The parents can. And I felt like it was a blessing, but it was also a lot of pressure to try to do that.
Yeah, and I appreciate the reality that you do need to know your kids individually and be able to interact with them individually. I mean, it was when I was growing up, my mom and dad had 3 boys. And so to connect with us and develop that relationship, my dad would just say, hey, boys, let's go play ball.
Yeah.
And we would play either football, basketball, or baseball in the backyard, whatever. And it was connection time to lay a foundation to talk about different things. And I actually think sports provide a lot of opportunities in terms of understanding a biblical worldview. I mean, it's crazy, the connections there in terms of how does a team function? Well, a team functions in light of whether or not it's following biblical principles, whether the coaches know it or not. But then the other component is I ended up with 3 kids and none of them put sports in the top 10 of things they like to do. And so I had to pivot there. And it reminds me of, because I would say, hey, let's all go play wiffle ball, and I would get silence. And so it reminds me of not only the point of, hey, listen, we do need to know our kids individually, but also in terms of an upside down culture. And I think about one of the biggest challenges is, I think our culture has been emphasizing it's our job as parents to make our kids happy. And I would say, no way, Jose, to that. It's actually, hey, we're called to help our kids understand what it means to be holy. And what it means to be holy is you belong to God. Now, I can't make my kids holy, but I can teach them what it means to be holy in light of the different occupations that they pursue and the different type of interests that they are wanting to look into and get involved in. And it's actually interesting that is an upside down concept to say, listen, it's not my job to make you happy, kiddo. It's my job to help you understand and reflect the holiness of God, not by making them do it, but helping them see how that not only benefits them, but benefits others to produce human flourishing. So my kids know that my primary job is not to make them happy. It's to teach them and train them to become holy followers of the triune God of the universe. And I just think I'm so grateful for this Upside Down Parenting podcast. First of all, so we can hopefully challenge some of that thinking that we're supposed to get these kids happy, but also to say, here are some things to think about when it comes to belonging to God, being holy, because it's much more important. Being holy, we've kind of watered down the meaning of it to say being separated or separated. And it actually means to belong to the God of the universe and to be his and as a result, reflect his character and his priorities.
Yeah, I sense the tension there. I definitely feel that. I don't want my kids to be unhappy.
No.
I don't want them to, if they come home and their feelings have been hurt by something, I want to know what it was. Yeah. I don't want them to hurt. But at the same time, I know as a guy who's, been in ministry, been in business, been in higher education, there's certain ways in which you have to hurt in order to grow. Like you're not going to be a better, Matt, I have in my mind like cross country. Did you coach cross country? Did you run cross country? Or
my son ran cross country, and actually Janelle's kid. Is it 1 or 2 run cross country? Janelle?
My 2 oldest are cross country runners. Yeah.
Yeah. It's terrible. It's terrible. Stephanie and I hike in a place here, and the cross country team from the neighboring high school, they run up there, and it's terrible. It hurts. They are, they don't smile much. Their coach is always with them, which tells me something good about good coaching. Yeah. The coach is always right there with them, running alongside, which is great. But in order for them to succeed in the competition, they have to hurt when they practice, right? Yep. And in the military, they always say it's better to sweat in training than to bleed in battle. So you've got to do that. How do you do that now with your kids? How do you help them find that balance?
Yeah, I think it's resilience, right? You're teaching them resilience and equipping them. And I think that's emotional and physical. I think our middle, he just decided, he's a freshman this year, and he decided to go out for basketball. And our kids don't do year-round sports. We're just not a family that has the capacity. For multiple reasons. We haven't put that as a priority. Be well-rounded athletes. Be involved in different things. Your education is important. Be on top of your classes. And so when he stepped in to try out for high school basketball, he's a kid that he's not, and I've shared this with Matt. Our kids aren't D1 athletes. They're great kids, but he steps in and he came home that night, and he's probably the more emotional of the 3 kids. And I could tell he was off. And I said, Bud, what's wrong? How were tryouts? And he lost it because he felt so below the skill level. And as a parent, those were conversations. I said, let's pray. That was the first thing we did. Let's pray. And for him, he's a kiddo that's also he has built resilience. Well, and God has, I would say, equipped my husband and I to come around him for that. He said, no, I want to go back. I'm going to put my head down and do it. And he made the C team, the freshman team, which is great for him. But it's building that resilience. It's building that character. And yeah, God doesn't ask us to, he's not telling, life's not going to be easy, but we're being resilient for him. And those, it's the calluses that are built up, right? Internally and physically, that help us be stronger in our faith. It's when we experience that pain and suffering, if we're led by our emotions, man, that's not going to go well. But if we can land back on God's truth and who he is and what we know, those calluses can continue to build, so that resilience is there and we can keep our eyes on the Lord.
That's so good. Well, that helps explain why the Apostle Paul would use so many athletic metaphors.
Yep. That's true.
In his work, because if you want your muscles to be bigger, they have to be broken down. What's rebuilding is the repair work that has to happen. So finding that spot. Well, one of the things you guys do in your show, and we wanted to talk about this a little bit. Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it, has been used in a lot of different ways. A lot of people claim that verse. That means if you take your child to church, they won't walk away from their faith when they get older. And we all recognize that's not really probably the right expectation, but it's something that parents say to themselves. But you have a different way of approaching that text, which draws out some aspects of it that may be helpful to parenting rather than some kind of a guilt thing, because if a child strays later on, you say, well, clearly I didn't raise them in the way they should go. And this is super serious for a lot of people, because there are a lot of parents out there with kids of all ages, and they're just thinking, man, this is a train wreck. This is not at all going the way I expected or the way I wanted.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because Christine Yoder, an Old Testament scholar, she defines a proverb as an authoritative word that enables one to master living. It offers trustworthy counsel based on a perceived order of the world. And so a lot of times we've taken proverbs as promises, and proverbs are essentially generally true statements, based on a perceived order of the world. And so it's generally true that if you train a child in the way they should go, they will not depart of it. But I remember teaching a Sunday school class it was intergenerational. We're huge fans of intergenerational Sunday school classes. And there were so many heartbroken adults in there who had adult children. And they, as you mentioned, Jeff, they mentioned, what did I do wrong with my kids? And first of all, I just want to dispel that theory that these proverbs are promises. God is a perfect parent, and he has some super rebellious children. But then on top of that, John Piper, and I've done some work in terms of looking at some research on this particular passage, is there may be a better way to translate that. And the idea is that train up a child according to his way, and he will not depart from it. In other words, this might be more of a warning. Is according to his way God's way, or is it according to the child's way? Because if it's according to the child's way, if you and I don't do the work that is necessary to teach them what's true, to provide a biblical worldview, to encourage them to walk in the ways and understandings of the Lord, they may stay in their selfish, sin-infested states if we don't train them. And so there's some great discussion in terms of, is it a better translation to say, train up a child according to his, referring to the child, way, and they will not depart from it? This may be a warning instead of something that's encouraging. And my wife and I have discussed this on multiple occasions, that we may be doing damage to our children if we don't step in and help them understand and see their tendencies to throw fits, or their tendencies to lie or want to steal. And so we've seen that as something we really need to consider, that this may be a warning.
Wow. Yeah, so interesting. That gives you Janelle, a whole different way of thinking of success and failure.
Yeah.
And parenting.
Yeah, I really like that, Matt. I've never heard that, but that's something it's something to ruminate on for sure. That's something that I'm going to continue to think on. I do think I totally agree with the Proverbs, and they aren't it's not a promise. It's not you do this, it's you get this. It's God has gifted us with these kiddos, and we're asked to make an investment in them. There's no guaranteed return on that investment. It's not a promise. It's you put in all you can and honor what God has gifted us as parents, and then you hope and pray that those seeds are planted. And that's, I'm thinking of 22:6 in that different way, that it will not depart from him, right? That it's there. Those seeds are planted, and it's solid. It's there. They may not be watering them. They may not be getting that foundation. They may have fallen flat, but they're there. You have laid that foundation. So that's really interesting, Matt. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, and again, it's worth thinking about, because Piper, he initially exposed me to that line of thinking, but it also says, well, wait, just a minute. I need to know the nature of my kid either way. Yeah. And I do, according to that proverb, have a level of influence. And either way, I want to trust the supernatural activity of God to say he's going to work, but he wants to use what he's doing in our lives as parents to have an influence. And there's just so many encouraging components to the book of Proverbs to say, wait a minute, it's given some really, really good advice in terms of not only how to interact with your spouse, not only how to interact with your world and your work, but it gives some great advice in terms of how to interact with your children. And it's actually pretty cool to put those things into practice. I was reading in Proverbs 19 today. It says, cease listening to instruction, my son, and you will stray from the words of knowledge. And I was like, okay, first of all, as a parent, I cannot stray away from learning. Yep. I cannot stray away from listening. But then if I want my kids to continually be learners, I need to model that. And so these proverbs are incredible, and they give us great insight in terms of real practical living.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear how that translates into daily habits for you. I know some people recommend a family worship time, other kinds of things. I'd love to just hear when you think about, okay, I now not only am I a parent, I'm also doing a parenting podcast, and thousands of people are listening to me give advice about this. What are the things that you are intentionally doing each day? Janelle, I'd love to hear from both of you, starting with Janelle.
Yeah. In each season as a parent, you have to adjust, right? And I want to express to parents, it's never too late. I think right. I'm so thankful that we started, my husband and I, intentionally when the kids were little, but it's never too late to develop new habits and to develop new rhythms in the family, to refocus. And sometimes seasons in life, depending on what the kids are involved in and work schedules, sometimes the rhythms change. In our family, some of our basic rhythms include dinner as a family, and we are in a season with sports, school practices that sometimes not all 5 of us are at the table together right now. Yeah. So it's for us it's that solid time, and we either when the kids were little, we were working through Bible storybooks. Then we went through some Bible studies. Now we're actually reading Pilgrim's Progress as a family. So it's that dinner time when we're all together is so important for that engagement, and then something intentional focused on the Lord. We do Bible reading every day, usually individual. I get up and do mine before the rest of the family. The kids do theirs. It's still part of their routine after homework before they go to bed. They're making their way through God's Word. Matt's heard my alliteration stories, some of the things that I've developed with the kids over the years that the kids actually love. We do Worldview Wednesday on the way to school, and that's that car time where we have an opportunity with the kids, and Matt will say it's because they can't get out of the car, so they're stuck with you, but it's good focus time. And years ago, we developed Worldview Wednesday where we started. The kids would watch while I was driving, World Watch, for that Christian focus on what's going on in the world, and then we'd talk about it. Thursday's Theology Thursday in the car. The kids get cocoa on the way to school, and they pick something more apologetics-based. Right now, it's still Red Pen Logic with Mr. B, and we'll pause it and we'll talk. How would you respond to that before he breaks it down? And then Fridays are Fallacy Friday. We use Kathy Gibbons, Filter It Through a Brain Cell, helping the kids. So there's some intentional supplemental things that we do in our normal rhythm so that hopefully throughout the day, we are looking to point the kids to God in everything. And then prayer, of course, like any time we can. And sometimes it's not our first instinct to say, let's stop and pray. But when it is, it's, man, let's do this. And if it's not our first instinct, we say, we messed up. Why are we not turning to the Lord? So it's being vulnerable and straightforward with the kids too.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that because we have a lot of those, or had, depending on different phases of the kids' lives, we had a lot of those same things, family Bible studies. In fact, when our kids were at a certain age, we rotated who led the Bible studies. Cool. And that was really great. Prayer. One of the things that my wife loved to do whenever she would take the kids for daily walks, she would describe what's going on those walks. And she'd say, God made that. God made that. And then, the next day, well, hey, we see a butterfly. Who made that? And the kid would go, it's God. And so just figuring out those, and we have a ton of ideas that come out on our podcast. So that's a great question, but I don't have a lot to add on that particular one, other than one more thing. One of the things I've really appreciated about Summit is the emphasis on meta-narrative. And I've been thinking through, wait a minute, if I'm filtering life through meta-narrative, and those who don't know what meta-narrative is, it's understanding the Bible as a one overarching connected story where you have creation, God created, the fall, humankind sin. As a result of humankind sinning, that we need redemption. So that's the third part. And that redemption is in preparation for, because of who Christ is and what he's done, restoration. And I've been thinking about, man, I wish somebody had helped me think through, Matt, what would it look like to help your kids think through something that's happening on a daily basis that connects to one of those 4 parts. Because you think about it, I mean, even the stories we hear, even the movies we watch, we could be intentional. Okay, what part of the meta narrative does that fall under? And so that's something I hopefully will be able to explore at some point a little bit more. How do we intentionally parent through the lens of the meta narrative? Because that's really been something I've been very appreciative of Summit for.
Wow. I can't wait to hear how that goes.
Yeah.
There are lots of ideas that come to my mind, but it's just, and we've talked about this in every show that I've recorded today. History is going somewhere, and it's going there on purpose, and we're part of it. That's very exciting. I'd love for you, and Janel, I want to throw this question your direction. What's the on-ramp for somebody? So let's say there's a parent who says, I'm really embarrassed to say this, guys, but this stuff never really occurred to me much because we're just busy, like you said, but I want to start.
Yep.
And I start, and the kids say, oh, that's so stupid. Why are we doing that? Give us an on-ramp to that.
Yeah, I think it depends on their ages too. I think vulnerability as a parent for trust, relationship, intentionality to say, hey, I haven't, and maybe you're not going to say I blew it, but maybe you did. Maybe you are going to be that vulnerable and say, I've blown it. I have not had our family focus correct. We are resetting, and this is why. This may be a little bit of a struggle while we get in a rhythm, but also asking them, what could this look like to you? What are things that you guys would enjoy doing? Sometimes with, and again, it depends on the age, but sometimes with the kids, it's just provide a question time. Provide what are your wonderings? What are you wondering about God? And as a parent, if you don't know, if there's some hard questions, like you take the ultimate, why does God allow pain and suffering? Let's find out together. Let's dig into that. That's a great question. I think to be vulnerable as a parent, to be real, transparent, and come alongside your kids and learn and reset, that's going to build trust. And I think for our kids to see mom and dad aren't putting on a facade of, oh, they're uber holy, and I don't see they do that out in public. I don't see that play out at home. This is coming alongside and being vulnerable and transparent and growing together, and being I guess honoring what the Lord has put in front of us.
That's really helpful. I can see that working. The idea of hey, we got to reset, and in different times in life, everybody knows they have to reset. So we got a family reset. We need to do this, and it takes a little while to get into the new habit. Yeah. Well, this is really helpful, and I think for if you don't have children, maybe younger people, maybe not even married yet, you might be thinking, if you're still here with us, it's because you kind of anticipate that being a parent is somehow something really special, and that. While every child is a nation in embryo, if that's true, then every human being who could parent is a builder of nations in embryo. And that is a very, very exciting thing. So thank you for hanging with us throughout all of this. And I would recommend that you check out the Upside Down Parenting podcast, Matt Jones and Janel Greig. And just enjoy the journey along with them as they talk about the ups and the downs and all of the things in between. And then anticipate maybe that God will perhaps give you that opportunity, that blessing and privilege at some point in the future. And for the parents who are wondering now, you're saying, man, you said that only 1 out of 2 parents really care about discipling, Christian parents care about discipling their kids. I want to be on the right side of that. Well, this is your podcast. This is the one, Upside Down Parenting, Matt Jones and Janel Greig. Thank you both for coming on the Truth Changes Everything show today.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, what a blessing. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you to my guests, Matt Jones and Janel Greig, for coming on the show today. I'd love for every parent listening to go subscribe to the Upside Down Parenting podcast. In fact, anyone who thinks they would love to be a parent someday, you can benefit from this. Just find it wherever you find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever. This podcast that you're listening to today, the Truth Changes Everything podcast, like the Upside Down Parenting podcast, is a resource of Summit Ministries. At Summit, we come alongside the rising generation, their trainers, parents, and influencers, so that young adults may know God's truth and become champions of a biblical worldview. If you'd like to learn more about Summit Ministries or find out about the resources we have, especially now because we're in an enrollment season for next summer for the 2-week program that is epic, that has such a profound impact on students' lives, all you have to do is go to summit.org Find all the information there. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.